Well, good morning, everybody. As you just look at this image here of yesterday, just as the sun was starting to set across the eastern side of the United States, I just want to give you a quick rundown on today's forecast video. I want to do a few things. After the historic rains of the past 10 plus days, I want to look at how much soil moisture has changed in the last month. I want to walk you through the quieter pattern we have overall, although it's not completely devoid of disturbances. I want to show you where I think the pattern picks back up again, as we talked about all month long, this kind of week on, week off, or 10 days on, 10 days off. I don't know, but there's a cadence to the pattern. I'm going to show you when it's going to pick back up again. And then I'm going to talk about some other kind of unique ways by which we can look out there longer term to kind of see maybe when these patterns go back overactive again. I'm going to finish right here with a whole sequence of new long-range forecast data that just came out from the National Multi-Model Ensemble. And then I've got some questions about South America that I hope you can kind of engage with me on, specifically around the dryness. Okay? So let's come back to the first image here. One of the things that happened yesterday as high pressure built into the southeast was that the temperatures really bottomed out. Now we've already seen a turnaround in the wind direction overnight back from the south, going from the south through the south, but into the southeast. We think things got pretty cold last night. If you just take a look at the temperatures early this morning, about 6 a.m. as I'm recording this, we can see we had temperatures in parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, northern parts of of Alabama here, clipping Georgia, the Carolinas, they got into the low 30s, which means we had a patchy frost again in this area this morning. But you can see already the warm-up that's happening here. The cooler conditions you see throughout the west are still kind of dominated by our Mountain Valley, setup here. But if you just take a look at what the winds are doing right now, this is just a good look at a couple things we're going to talk about, right? We do have some stronger winds that are coming through the plains, very strong winds that are going to come through parts of Kansas today. The Bermuda high has shifted. It's way over here now, which is one of the reasons why we are not going to see wide open Gulf of Mexico moisture transport into the central U.S., which could just, rip off storm system after storm system after storm system. The other part of this is just to kind of fling this around and look in the North Pacific. The behavior of the North Pacific is certainly more dominated by high pressure. There's the Pacific high here. There's another one there. And there's no real deep lows kind of in place across the Pacific, which is why this pattern's a little bit more calm for a while. But we come back to our all hazards weather map here. We can see the wind advisories, the red flag warnings, that are coming out of parts of the plains. We are going to then watch. This will be kind of the end of our freeze issues here for a little while. Okay, I'll talk to you more about that in a few minutes. I have some more information about that long range, freeze threat. But we can see all of the rivers that are still in flood stage in through this area. So thinking that through, the temperatures already rebounding as they're compared to 24 hours ago. Temperatures are 15 to 25 degrees, some places up to 30 degrees warmer than they were a day ago. And that's largely thanks to the turnaround of these winds just bringing the warmth back into this region. Again, it's going to be relatively strong winds, but just thinking about this temperature pattern, over the next 7 days, you can see the influence of what those winds are doing. Our frost threat has really just kind of jumped up here. Now, again, I'm going to talk about where I think this frost line might be for the next 2 weeks in a few moments, but we're certainly on our last day of it here and last day of it here in the near term, okay? All right, from there, I want to show you what the temperatures are going to do. I redesigned the website the other day. I don't know if you noticed this. Let me just show it to you real quick. Go to agweather.com. You now have some other interesting options up here at the top. You can choose a region you want to focus on, so you can kind of pick your spot around the globe, or you can pick a model that you're interested in. I gave quick model descriptions down here to use, and the whole setup is much more mobile friendly. And now when you land on the main page and you go looking for certain things, like where they commonly are, when you click on them, I have new animators. And one of the things I did with this was I went back to preserving the original resolution of the images rather than degrading them slightly so that they would load faster. I found that it didn't really make that much of a difference. So go play with the website. Hopefully it's much more user-friendly and it works better on your phone. All right, what you've got here is the max temperatures for today. So significant warm-up in the central United States as the cooler weather kind of fades off to the east. But this isn't going to be just constant warmth. Throughout the Great Basin, still Thursday, much warmer. Central Plains warmer, but on Friday, behind another cold front, we're going to watch much of the eastern Corn Belt, Ohio River Valley cool off. While 70s, maybe 80s get into Wyoming and the western side of Dakotas and parts of Montana. But as I said, this is transient, so we may touch 90s here in parts of Colorado, western Kansas. Look at the temperatures in this section of the plains. But then watch, we already pushed that east as we get into Sunday, Monday. and we could see temperatures dropping off 30, maybe. I mean, it's possible. The range in temperatures here over a 3-day time period could be 40 to 50 degrees as this colder weather comes back in temporarily. But that's very common for April, right? A up-down temperature pattern. We often call it like a roller coaster. So nothing unexpected there when you see that. So the question is, are we bringing any moisture with these frontal boundaries? Well, the clue I gave you a moment ago with that Bermuda high way out in the Atlantic Ocean is going to be part of this. But over the last 7 days, there is just no doubt, looking at the extremities or the extremes of this rainfall. Some places here picking up, 10 times normal rainfall during that stretch. And remember, this was desperately needed in this area, but this was not. And just thinking this through, I wanted to show you a couple of things, because spring flooding rains, while absolutely terrible to endure, have important benefits, okay, hydrologically. They have terrible impacts on our livelihood, but it is a part of a natural system that, to be honest with you, is designed to flood, right? And that's not minimizing the effect, but I want to show you what it did. You go back to the early part of March. This was March 9th, all right? This is our 40 centimeter soil moisture data, so 16 inches. And this is what it looks like now, all right? So you can kind of see some differences here from early March to now. What I'm most interested in is this. This was the soil moisture deep, down deep. And this is the one that changes much more slowly. So 0 to 100 centimeter soil moisture percentile. This was the before March 9th, and this is now. So I want to make a couple of points. Have we seen improvement in these areas? Yes. Are we flooding this area? Absolutely. But this is going to be soaked and saturated ground that is full profile, meaning that as time goes on, all right, and we do get this dried down and we do get the ability to get some field work done, we're not going to be talking about a lingering problem in this area from fall drought, which it was very dry here, remember? There is still drought from fall lingering deep in our soil, from northern Illinois to Kansas and all the way to the Dakotas and Minnesota. Now, I've been here. I've seen the topsoil looks pretty good in a lot of these places from recent moisture, but we just don't want lingering deficits kind of sitting around, right? That's always the narrative behind this. So let's just kind of see where we're going over the next 10 days. I went to the European model, and just we're noticing that this pattern is sending more of the systems maybe across the northern tier of the U.S., and we do have a couple of weak systems coming in the middle, but overall, most folks that need to get a chance to dry down a bit are going to get that. This is the off time period in the pattern with respect to just the sheer activity we've seen in the midsection of the United States. So what's causing it? Well, this is the newest artificial intelligence forecast for the next 15 days. I want to let you know something. In terms of skills, and I want to thank Dr. Maui for letting me use this graphic again, the AI model right now has the highest skill score, just barely ahead of the operational European, but a few percentage points ahead of the GFS in the last 90 days. And you can see the 30-day and 7-day. There's always this thing that happens with the GFS, and that is that every once in a while, it just has a fallout where it's not predicting the 5-day northern hemisphere height pattern. That's the trough ridge pattern. And it just came out of one of those. What's interesting is it almost always just rebounds and makes a huge recovery. And it did that recently. But I'm going to tell you why I'm showing you the AI model. So this is the next 15 days. During that time period, we do see most of that time period, the Bermuda high is out here. We bring in a Pacific high there, and we have a central U.S. high pressure cell that's going to be around, meaning systems are going to come through. They're going to come over the top of this ridge, coming into the Pacific Northwest. They're going to have to roll over that ridge and then kind of curl their way up through the Canadian Maritimes. And that's one of the reasons why the pattern is a bit more benign. But again, I wanted you to see those model run differences. But if you want to see it in action, it looks something like this. So here's the trough that comes through Thursday. That's going to give us that cold shot of air on the backside, but a very quick rebound in temperatures going into the weekend. We're going to watch a system snake right here. This is on Sunday across the U.S.-Canada border. That's a snowmaker farther to the north. It's going to bring a frontal boundary through, but do you see what's happening here? We're getting systems that are kind of just clipping through this area and then deepening into the northeast, right? That's the pattern we seem to be in. So this is going to give us, a relatively cooler signal overall Great Lakes and east, more mild Great Plains to Great Basin over time. And the storm action is going to be largely to the north as you watch this go through. So over the next 7 days, you can kind of see that. Now, we need this moisture in Montana. We need this moisture in North Dakota. Some of this is going to be snow going farther in this direction, but the moisture coming through here, these are smaller numbers, right? We're now looking at a third to a half inch of total moisture coming into this area, with heavier rains getting in here to parts of the eastern United States, which needs this moisture in a big way. So that's your 7 days from the WPC. Let's now go look at some of the individual parts of this. There is tomorrow, okay, this is the day 2 outlook. So on the 10th here, there is this risk in the mid-south into the southeast for stronger storms. So I want to show you what that looks like after I look at these winds from this next system. We do take note that there will be some stronger winds behind or along this system running through the midsection of the country. And you can take note that right here in parts of Kansas, we are anticipating winds gusting maybe over 50 miles an hour today. Same thing down here a bit farther. But let's go ahead and have a look, though. In fact, let's go back to this. Let's just do our simulated radar to kind of see, see how this takes shape. So here's the showers this morning that are moving through parts of the Midwest. All right, we play this on out. There's this secondary wave that kicks in. Where are we? This is Thursday morning. So as this spreads its rain through parts of Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, there's this see this wave coming through the backside? It's like almost right over St. Louis, Missouri by noon tomorrow. And that is where we expect the initialization, of some storms into this area. So this will be in the evening. There's just a tight shortwave that's coming around the backside of this low that's going to do that. Meanwhile, we do have a system coming into the Pacific Northwest at this time as well. But to see kind of all of this put together, oh, and by the way, this is now on the site. So if you want to define this, go to agweather.com. You can just scroll down here a little bit, and you'll see it right there. GFS and ECMWF forecast maps should load relatively quickly for you here. I've got the GFS left, European right, and here's that same little system. Now, take note, there could be some snow on the northern side of this right here. We then play this forward. That snow comes into parts of the interior of the Northeast, while the rain spreads into this region Thursday night into Friday. We then watch as that low curls up into the Northeast. Take a look at the snow forecast here. This is on Saturday, while the next system runs right along the U.S.-Canada border. As I mentioned, there is snow with this one as well, right through this area. Okay, but it's going to try to drag a front by Monday back into the Corn Belt. See it right there? This is Sunday, Monday. But there's just not a whole lot of moisture to work with while the Bermuda high is off. It's just gone. And just to kind of make a point here, let me show you again how to use this site. Let's just say I want to go choose a model. I'd like to use the European model for the continental United States, and I'd like to see total snow. So what we can get a picture of here is how much snow we are expecting out of this. So maybe we'll watch right in through here for some snow. Look at the interior parts, Pennsylvania, New York. And then you see the second system this weekend into early next week, coming out of Montana into North Dakota, then hitting parts of, Manitoba into Ontario. That's where we're expecting that heavier snow. All right. So let's take a look at some total precipitation amounts. 10-day outlook from the European. Here's the 10-day outlook from the GFS and the 10-day outlook from the AI. I'll be honest, the European and the GFS are very similar overall in positioning for most of these next couple of systems, but it's relatively an inactive time period with respect to high impact storm systems, if that makes sense. So what we want to do instead is just look at some probabilities. And over the next week, here's the chance of getting an inch. Let's stretch it out to 10 days. You can see at that time period, we start to see better chances of moisture coming in through here, getting an inch. But these are 10-day probabilities in the 20 to 40% range of getting an inch of moisture. So that kind of leads us to where are we drier? So let's go see who's under a half inch over the next 10 days. And now you can see the influence of having the Bermuda high off, right? We're not wet in these areas. Okay. So what about getting into week 2? This is where the pattern we think is going to start to pick itself back up again at the very end of week 2. And overall, the models are not showing, anything too conclusive here, but I do want to point out that after about April 16th and 17th, we are going to watch for a disturbance to come out of the southern plains into the mid-south again. This is not one of the big ones like we've just seen, but there is an uptick in the pattern as we approach the end of this month. And I'm going to show you that by looking at the new European weeklies. So here we are getting out there. This is the week from the 13th to the 20th. Now watch what happens as we get toward the very end of April, the last week of April right here. We see that the time period starts to increase the risk of severe storms here. And then as we start the month of May, this is absolutely critical that this area does go back over stormy. Now, in terms of planting, in terms of field work, no, but in terms of hydrology and the moisture that's in the soil, yes. This is what we've been talking about. The Bermuda high comes back, the flow comes around it, we open it up to some slower early May storm systems. And there's some support for this late April, early May timeframe. I'm going to take you to Victor Cassini's work. He's at Northern Illinois University. He's a full professor there. And I want to show you that when we get out here to the week 3 forecast, we've seen this model begin to open up better chances of storms. Look how far back to the west they are. Like this is critical. That is an important thing that needs to happen early. All right? So we're just trying to put some teeth into this. What needs to occur, what needs to occur during this time, though, is that the temperature pattern has got to reflect the Bermuda high returning. So it's kind of interesting. Since the beginning of April, you can see the influence of the Bermuda high keeping so much of the southeast so warm. While the Bermuda high has been pumping in the moisture, we've had rapid storm systems that have brought in big fronts, right? That's been the case. But if you've been underneath that big high pressure cell, you only got one real shot at rainfall that came through recently. Otherwise, it's been quite mild. This is a warm, very warm start to the month, while down here in New Mexico, one of the coldest. Now, thinking that through, I want to show you what's going on with this pressure pattern. Since the beginning of April, the Bermuda high has been sitting here. Where's Bermuda? Right there. So that's what it's been. It's dropped the pressure in through here, giving us those pressure troughs that the storm systems had followed, and that's what the case was. Now, we know this has wandered off a little bit, and that's what's giving us this more benign pattern. So technically, the Bermuda high is floating around way up here in the North Atlantic. And guess what it's done? When it moves up here, high pressure builds in there, and high pressure builds in here, right? That's just the way the pattern works. But as we see going forward, we have lows that sneak over the top of this. They just don't have much moisture to work with. And what happens? We bring the high pressure back again. This is by next Wednesday. We then watch this pattern continue to evolve. And what I'm curious about is out there around the 18th, 19th, 20th, does this just start wandering its way back into here as pressure drops there? We start to open this up to multiple systems to finish this month. There's some additional support for this. This is using a website out of the Atmospheric Sciences Department at the State University of New York at Albany. The professor's last name is Roundy. And what we're looking at here is he's gone through and made what's called a 100-day low-pass MJO constructed analog. Now, what I want you to see in this is I'm going to click the word advance. And what I'm watching for, here we go. This is the 13th, 14th. I'm watching for that. See that? See that trough right in there? And the ridging over the southeast? This is the end of April. That is the pattern, trough west, ridge east, that tends to light up the central U.S. with severe weather. So that's why we're thinking about this, because I've told you for at least a week and a half, that I've been struggling with the MJO signal right now, but his low-pass filter may be able to tease out what I needed to see. So I want to thank Professor Roundy for producing this so we can kind of get a good look at it. Okay, all that being said, this temperature pattern is going to evolve, and I want to show you the matrix. Again, I love this view of it. So European ensemble, GFS ensemble, AI. So what is happening right now is we're in the opposite phase, right? We have the ridges here and the troughs there. This whole pattern needs to evolve such that we have troughs here and ridges there if you want to get storms cranking again. Okay, so what do we see? This is the next 5 days. This is day 5 through 10, day 10 through 15. There's certainly a more mild push of things as we go forward. But speaking of that, I mentioned at the beginning, so now that we transition away from the severe weather talk, we need to talk about another impactful weather event for us in spring, which is frost. So I'm going to show you an animation from the European ensemble. This is the 0Z run from today. And what it's going to look at here is the probability of a frost. So this was this morning, right? And we saw this. This was the chance of having a frost this morning. As we play this forward, what we're watching here is just the positioning of the deepest reds. So this is getting into Friday and Saturday. So you can kind of see there's a frost event early Saturday morning happening here, for example. Also in parts of the Canadian Prairie and the Northeast. But then we go into early next week. This is Sunday into Monday. Now watch. Into Tuesday, we start to see the cold air returning to the northern plains by next Tuesday. Getting out to Wednesday, there you can see the trough settling over the Great Lakes, the risk of frost increasing here. We're going to get out there to Thursday, and Friday it goes toward the northeast. But then as we just work our way through, you just start to see it kind of it kind of goes in a wave-like action. And as I get out there to April 22nd, 23rd, 24th, you just kind of notice that the model is not overly aggressive, even in the early morning, at showing the risk of really, really cold air. And it's got a lot of us wondering, have we kind of gotten out of the woods after this morning of our last frost? I think there's, as Matt and I were talking, like maybe a non-zero chance that we're, that we're done with frost in this area after this morning. Now we got to be careful because we do know we have a cold shot coming in. It's coming in Saturday morning here, but just something to think about here. And we're going to watch this each forecast time period, or each forecast we do in the mornings here. All right, lastly, I want to show you the temperatures from the European weeklies. And Matt did a great job discussing this. As we get out there toward the end of the month, there's a chance that what you're seeing here, okay, is a feedback from the current water budget, evaporative cooling, the atmosphere's tendency right now to drop troughs into this area. And I think that's what we're seeing in terms of the cooler conditions. But the warmth in through here seems to be a pretty consistent forecast piece going through the end of April and the start of May. And so therefore, I think what we need to be doing is watching very carefully, these temperature forecasts. Another way you can do this, by the way, if you just go to ag weather, I don't know, I'm just going to put in my parents, 62563. They live in Rochester, Illinois. So this is going to give zip code their forecast. One thing you can do is look at the 10-day multi-model outlook. And I put in a frost zone in here from 32 to 36. So you can see where the NBM or the GFS or the European are touching. So there's that Saturday morning frost risk. I'll actually be with them on Saturday, so it'll be interesting to see if we touch it. Then you get over here again, it looks like April 16th, one of the models, the Europeans down at 35. So we're just going to watch out for these. You can also use this to look at your soil temperatures. Go to click on 10-day soil conditions. I put a 50-degree line on there so you can see it, but we're kind of bouncing around that 50 degrees. What we're waiting on is being consistently above 50 in this part of the world to get a crop planted. All right. Okay, so other models. The CFS-V2 is much more generous on the warmth through the end of April, which is the top map, in the beginning of May. And there are some signs that this could be the way it goes. I cannot rule out a Great Lakes Eastern Corn Belt very, very late April, early May risk of a frost, because that's a common thing that happens there. But overall, the models are trending a bit more mild. So what this brings us to is some longer range discussion, May, June, July, all the way through summer. And we've talked about this map quite a bit. We've looked at several analog years, like 2006, 2008. That was a big one Matt did yesterday. 2011, 2017, 1996, 1999, just to name a few. We looked at 2012. That's that kind of terrifying reverse C shape that we don't like to see, plus the warmer water here and here, which was and cooler water there, which was a big thing in 2012. But I want to show you, we looked at the European model earlier this week. Matt looked at it again. I want to show you the new NMME forecast. So here's their ocean temperature forecast. And again, I'm like, why are the models so warm in so much of the North Pacific? I buy it here, but I think we better watch this region right here much more closely as we go forward in time. The NMME came up for this for May, June, July on kind of where the precipitation rates are going to be above or below average. So they're wetter in the southeast. The kind of the epicenter of dryness in their forecast is in Kansas, Nebraska, and parts of Iowa. This is June, July, August. Now they've shrunk this area a little bit. It was once way over in these colors in here, but this is the newest one we've got. This is July, August, September, and August, September, October. And I went through those fast because I really just want to say one thing. These models have been consistent with drier risks in this area for months. They've been going after active southwest monsoons. They've been going after wetter southeast. They've been going after ridge riders that come up into Canada and then cascade through the Great Lakes into the east. And there is evidence to support this. But we are still, right? It's April. When we get into mid-May to mid-June, that is the time period whether or not we will know July and August do bring in risk or if they don't. So a lot of uncertainty between now and then, just to be transparent and clear on this. When it comes to the temperatures, I just want to point this out. The model uses this like nuclear color bar. I mean, it just looks like torched, but I just want to point out that they are going after the hottest temperatures in the Western Corn Belt for summer compared to historical averages. All right. Now, I flashed up there a bit on South America, and this is where I want to finish. The last 30 days, according to the CMORPH data set, has been dry. Now you can still raise an incredible crop in here being drier than average. So we got to be careful with the thought process there. But I was confused by this. The new satellite data from Grace suggests that the root zone soil moisture in a big part of where we grow safrinha crops is low. And then I was like, well, does it show up in other data sets? So I showed you the CMORPH. This is the CHIRPS data set. 2-month outlook, we can see that drought. Now, we talked extensively about the drought here, but I'm amazed to see that it still looks like this, given that we knew rain was coming in. And we see the model runs doing stuff like this all the time. That's the new 14-day outlook from the European Ensemble. It's trying to bring in above average rainfall to this area. We saw the NDVI bounce, right? Last Monday I talked about that, not the one we just had, but the Monday before that. And I don't know. I would like to get maybe some comments from anybody that's been paying close attention to the safrinha crop, just to let me know in the comments section so that I can hear a bit more about it. But I'm going to let you know that some of the historical data are dry. They can still raise an incredible crop when they're drier than average. But have there been pockets of drought that need me to think harder about if an adjustment needs to be made in the total production for that safrinha crop? I don't know, but we'll keep looking at it together. So I'm going to stop there. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks.